Streaming. Hey, it looks like we're live.
Nice.
Only one way to truly find out, though, right?
Hmm.
As all of our lovely podcasts start out so annoyingly. Whoa. All right, I think we're good. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Four Words or Less podcast. I'm Sam. I'm the fellow on the blue in the right, in the blue on the right, with the
I'm
beard.
I'm Justin. I'm the guy in red on the left.
Yep. And we got nothing for you today.
Sorry, y'all. It's just been one of those weeks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there has been some stuff happen, um, but mostly like personal life stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so there's been some flooding in Tennessee where like 20 people died apparently.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of
I,
crazy, isn't it?
yeah. See, I didn't even hear anything about that. It shows you how much I've been paying attention.
No, I haven't either. I just heard, from a friend or from a friend or whatever that lives in Tennessee.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, kind of outside the Nashville area.
Hmm.
It was kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a, it seems to be a pretty small zone, but at the same time, that area of Tennessee, it's crazy how much shit you can just hide because there's just so many trees.
Yeah.
So, like, your world seems so much smaller in the hill country there.
Hmm.
It doesn't look as devastating as everything else.
Yeah. Filling me with
Kind of weird.
confidence here. I was just looking at moving to Tennessee, so
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
I was looking at it. I looked at applying to a firearms company that was out there. I kind of actually did apply. They didn't have any. Like I cold called them. I cold emailed them
Mhm.
rather. So
Yeah. You
yep,
can only get so lucky with that sort of thing.
yeah, it's kind of a shot in the dark for sure. So
So speaking of which, that's something that we haven't talked about on the podcast much, and we'll use fairly, general terms here. But how has your work situation been? Are you kind of settling in there?
I'm doing pretty good. It seems like they're very willing to like work with me on as far as like the whole training thing goes, and me not knowing the inner workings of the company and stuff like that. Kind of got an attaboy this morning for an engineering decision that I had pointed out a couple of days ago. Kind of a creative solution, and they decided to go with it. So
Hey, there's a good feeling for you.
yeah, yeah, I feel useful,
Yeah,
and it's like understandable how slow going it can be sometimes.
yeah, yep. Well,
So I
that's how
don't
you
know.
know they're in, right? When they start listening to your suggestions.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all guys with 5 years or less engineering experience for the most part. So,
Oh, really? Wow.
hmm
So there's
yeah,
not really a single senior.
not really. No, it's a lot of like guys in their 20s and 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's so weird because, my company's pretty well established. We've got people who've been in the industry for, 20, 30 years.
yeah, we kind of need that a little bit, but at the same time, like I'm sure engineers just retire when they get to
Yeah,
that point. They're making enough
yeah.
money. That's the goal. So it's interesting, but yeah, no, it's going pretty good. I feel pretty useful, and they're really forgiving on the whole um, learning curve thing. And they're also really, really, my boss is into time off. He's a real big proponent of like vacation time and stuff like that. So take it where you can get it, kind of thing.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, not bad at all. So today I went and looked at a canoe.
Ah,
Yeah.
think you'll buy it, or was it?
No, I went and looked at it. It was a secondhand, Craigslist kind of buy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was a 16-foot canoe. It was an Old Town Discovery for $100. I was like, wait, what? So
Yeah.
even though it was
So was
red,
it just like rotted through, or what
yeah,
was
it was
wrong?
stored outside. And when I flipped that bastard over, it had a puncture all the way through the floor, and that's why I flipped it over in the first place was to get a
Uh-huh.
look at that. And I saw that it had started to crack and stuff down the
Yep.
center, and these are like long, deep cracks. So I was like, yeah, I'm not buying this. I
No.
mean, I if I was looking for a canoe to just beat the hell out of and like just pits around, like I would buy that canoe for my kid, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and just slap some tape on it and call it a day. Or if it
Yeah.
was like a pond and I intended to leave this canoe outside and stuff. But I'm planning on getting a canoe that will get me out into. Oh, hey, uh, we got a viewer. What's
Yeah.
up,
What do you
man?
got?
Um, Startup vibes. What do you mean by startup vibes? Anyway, so I'll keep an eye on the chat there. So yeah, this canoe was. I want one that's gonna get me into like multi-day trips.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can't be having something that's gonna have like a real slow leak over a couple of like days out in the
Yeah.
wilderness somewhere. So no go on that one, but is what it is. And then I saw another one. This, so you don't know much about this. Do you want me to keep babbling about this and like use it as a
Yeah.
learning experience there?
Yeah. Why not?
When you
Keep
said
going.
you were working with most people, it's not really a startup company per se. Um, so we got to come. Can you pull up the chat so you can at least like follow along,
Yeah.
Justin?
Let me.
Um, so it said when you were working with mostly people, all with 5 years or less of engineering. I mean, it's not really a startup company. It's a 25-year-old company, but
Yeah, it's still pretty young.
yeah, they've got like 50 employees, and they're all talking about, oh, we're growing so much, da 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 da, and we're getting too big for our britches a little bit, and all new office and stuff like that. I was like, you guys, I used to go to work where there were 5,000 people in the building that I worked in.
Yeah.
50 is not a big company to me, but you know, that's pretty good though. 50 solid employees.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good operation.
Yeah,
But
and I mean it gets pretty insane when you're talking about, the scale of some companies. Like our company that I work for considers like we think we're mid-scale and we've got about 10,000 employees in 8 countries, you
whoa,
know. And that's a mid-sized company for our industry.
wow, yeah, but that's like you're stretching across borders and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is something where it's like it has to be in the United States. So
Yeah.
I guess it's a
So
pretty small knit community. That's probably what I'm gonna end up learning. But anyways, back to canoes. Do you want to learn more about canoes? You want me to keep babbling on about them, or what?
yeah, sure, why not? I know nothing about canoes, so this will be informative for me.
Okay, so
I know you've been into them for a little while now.
yeah, I mean, it all started with like Boy Scouts. I went all the way up to 50 people, less bureaucracy, less admin, less slackers. Yeah, for sure. Ask me questions about canoes. We're getting away from that. So, so, uh, so it all started in Boy Scouts. I went up to this camping, this high adventure camp. There's three big ones when you're in Boy Scouts back in the day. It was Northern Tier, which is a canoeing experience on the Canadian border, where it's like they call it the land of 1,000 lakes, where you just kind of snake back and forth from one lake to another, and you do land crossings to get from one lake to another. And they're really, I mean, if you look at it on a map, the place looks like a cheetah's back or something.
Mhm.
It's pretty cool. It has what's a canoe?
Perfect. You asked for it, man. You
I
asked
did,
for it.
I did. um, and so so that's the one I went to. If you look at it on a map, it looks like a cheetah's back. It's so splotched with water and lakes and stuff. So we did a 6 day canoeing trip right there on the Canadian border, where we even kind of crossed over the border a couple of times during the week. It was really, really cool. Um, and yeah, you're getting crickets, bro. Um, what's a canoe? um, so we did that, and that was really, really cool. And I think that's where I really kind of it opened my eyes to that as a possibility. And then I got a kayak a couple years ago, and I decided to do some tripping with it. And I wanted to take it on a long trip, but never really had the opportunity to. So I'll back up a little before I got the kayak. So I did the trip for scouting, and then I did a trip down the Chattahoochee River with my buddies senior year, and two of us were in a canoe and one of us was in a kayak. Um, and that was a really, really fun trip. That was like a 3 day canoeing trip, and we took it all the way from like a certain put in point all the way down to um, this big lake, and then canoed across the lake um, and took out at my buddy's lake house. His parents had a lake house down there. So it was a multi-day excursion. So listen to this. It's story time now. This
Oh no.
so that usually has like really hefty banks along this river that are like 18 to 19, feet ish. Like it's a scramble to get down to the water, right?
Hmm.
Um, we went on this trip and we're all like 18 and just full of piss and vinegar. It was flooded 21 feet.
Shit.
Yeah, man. A canoe and a kayak? Man, okay, I'll answer that question. A canoe has an open top, um, and you can carry a whole lot. Usually they're pretty big, they're much bigger, and you can carry a whole lot more gear in them, and they're intended for two people in most cases. Whereas a kayak, the drawback, there's pros and cons. A kayak is fully enclosed, and you kind of sit in a cockpit, so you get less wet. You have less potential to get wet, and if it rains, like you don't get water in the boat. Um, in a kayak, you also sit lower in the water, so you're pretty well stable that way. So, rocking wise, they're a little more stable, um, and they tend to track better. And you're usually just a solo one person in a kayak, so you have a lot more mobility and freedom. Um, Such user experience buffering. So we're having some issues here. I'm gonna see if it just smooths out. But anyway, um, so the kayak usually is like a solo thing. You can carry a little less weight, but it's much easier and maneuverable. And you sit lower in the water, so you get blown around by the wind a lot less too. So yeah. Um, but with a canoe, like I said, you can have way more gear. Like it can hold like some of these canoes, most of them, two-person canoes can hold like 750 pounds of weight in them. So you could take all kinds of stuff, and it has an open top, so you're not limited to what fits down into the boat. Like a kayak is fully enclosed, so you'd have to shove your camping gear all the way to the front of the boat, in front of your feet and stuff like that, if you were gonna go on a long trip. Whereas, so there's no taking the Yeti cooler in a kayak. But if you wanted to take like a dog and a Yeti cooler and another friend, you could do that in a canoe. And you just put your packs in and out. It's much easier to load, stuff like that. So kayak more maneuverable, but less carry capacity. Canoe more carry capacity, less maneuverable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good explanation.
That's the pros and cons, at least for us. Just Google kayak, Google canoe. If you want to know more than that, you'll see pictures and you can tell the
That's not
difference.
very useful. No, I think your description was fine.
uh,
Um,
so
Now here's a question for you.
mm,
Do you ever use a double-bladed paddle in a canoe,
you
or
can, you
you
can.
can?
Yeah, if you're paddling solo, so it depends on the shape of the boat, and now we're really getting into it, right? So
Yeah,
it depends on the
that was the
shape
goal.
of the boat. Um, and that's where I'm like really playing with the idea of like, so it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, I want to buy a handgun. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do with it? It depends. What gun should I get? It depends. Same thing with canoes. So certain shapes are different and certain materials are better at certain things than other things. So, anyways, what was your question? Double bladed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they make solo canoes, and you even sit lower and they paddle just like a kayak, and you can use a double bladed canoe. They call them pack canoes, and they're meant for one person and maybe a dog in the front. Um, and that works really, really well if you're going on like solo trips. And they're super maneuverable, and it's basically just like a kayak with the top cut off of it. It has a little, a couple inches more on top, just to keep waves from splashing in a lot of cases. But the more you add on the top there, above the water line, um, the more you're going to get blown around by the wind as well, which is really exhausting. So there are also paddles and paddling techniques to where you can have a single bladed paddle or an oar, a paddle really. Oars are for rowboats. So you can have a single bladed paddle, and you switch sides every now and again just to keep your shoulders and stuff from fatiguing. But there are certain strokes that you can learn to do in the water, like how you control how it slices through the water. That'll keep the boat going in a relatively straight direction with you paddling on one side. It's not super duper efficient though, so some people like to bring along a single bladed or a double bladed paddle when they're going solo, and it does make it easier. Yeah,
All right.
I'll put it this way: if I was going to go on a solo trip, I would probably have like three paddles, and one of them would definitely be double paddle or double bladed. Yeah, because they're all situational. Yeah, but the boats themselves, the solo canoes, they make solo pack canoes that are just like kayaks. They're pretty neat, and I might, way on down the road, I might get one if I end up going on a couple of solo trips with a big boat. If I go on like three in the span of like 2 years, I'd probably want one because it would be worth the money to me if I had a dog too, you know, and like a friend that had a kayak. Like if they were all kayaking, I would want a pack canoe. That'd be really really handy. So yeah,
Yeah. Stick that in the garage with all the rest of your toys.
yeah, yeah. You need a bigger garage.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a bigger garage.
Well, that's what the engineering degree is for, right?
Right, right. It's so I can afford toys.
No, it's so
So
that you can build a bigger garage.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I can
Store
actually build it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can do that.
exactly.
Um, so right now I'm kind of like playing with the idea of like, do I wait longer? Because I just sold the canoe that I had. I got out from under it for just as much as I paid for it too, which is always a nice thing, you know,
Yeah.
when you get to use something for free for a year. Um, but I I'm looking at different canoes. The problem with the last one was its shape and weight. So it was made out of this.
You mean it wasn't the giant hole in it?
No, no, no,
Or
not the
the
one I
last one
took
you
to.
owned?
Yeah, the last one
Gotcha.
I owned. The one that I took a look at today was pretty much the same one, just longer and a little skinnier. So it was probably the better fit for me if I were to go back and buy one again last year. But you take what you can find when you're looking at secondhand stuff, right? For the right price, I'll take sacrifices on certain things. Depends on the water you're paddling in. So if you're going like super flat really open, deep water, like lakes and stuff like that, you're going to want something that has a long shape and a skinny hull to it, and it's going to feel a little tippier. Like it's going to tilt left and right more, and it'll feel like it's going to flip over pretty readily, but they track better in the water, meaning they go in a straight line way easier. So especially if you're solo, you're going to want that because you'll spend less time correcting your course and more time just focusing on your scenery and stuff like that. It's a lot less of a hassle in that sense. But if you're going whitewater, you want something with a really, and those generally, back up a little, those generally they sit deeper in the water and they tend to have like a more V ish type shape. So they track a little better. Um, but if you're going whitewater, you want something with a wide bottom, because it'll be more stable left and right and less tippy. And so it'll be harder to flip over, and something that's shorter. So it's short but wide, a chode canoe, and it'll be way more maneuverable really quickly so you can work your way around rocks and stuff like that. So those are kind of the two extremes, right? Somewhere in the middle is like flat water river paddling, which is generally you're in shallow water, but it's calm and you are turning some, but not like crazy. You don't need like crazy hard maneuverability. And when I say flat water, I mean like non-white water um, rivers. So that's pretty nice. So with that, you're trying to strike kind of a happy medium. And when you want the one boat that does it all, what you're really looking for is you want something that makes the sacrifices in shape that you would want based on how much you're going to be in the different types of water, right? Does that make sense?
Okay, then. So I gotta ask, how do you feel about more, I want to say casual boats, like a raft or a coracle or something like that? Would you ever take that for just like a lazy day floating down a river
A
or on a lake or
coracle?
something?
What's a coracle?
Yeah. It's a small round boat. They're common. They're not really big here in the States. They
Spell it.
use them a lot. Coracle. It's like a little round, kind of almost flat bottom boat. They're used for like traversing
Oh, yo.
small, fairly calm rivers.
Yeah, okay. So that would be more akin to a whitewater canoe. That looks pretty weird.
Yeah,
That's like
they're
just
funky.
taking yeah, yeah, that's really weird looking.
They're almost circular, right? And the old ones, they used to be woven, but
Yeah, that's
they're
what it
what
looks
people
like.
use for like traversing rivers and stuff like that, especially in the UK and in places like India and Vietnam.
That's pretty interesting. So what was your question about that?
So
My
would
opinion on using different boats for the different
yeah, well,
things?
would you ever invest in one of those for just like, lazy days on the river or, paddling around a lake or something like that, just
Nah, not me.
for the
I
extra
mean,
space? Yeah,
not
just a
me.
useful one.
Yeah, I would just get a different kind of canoe.
Okay.
To me, because I'm a canoe guy now. I like them. I just like the shape of them. It's right about. It strikes a really happy
Curves
medium.
in all the right places.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With a coracle, it looks like you'd be because with that, think about it this way: is you'd be paddling your ass off
Oh
to get
yeah.
a whole lot of nowhere.
Yeah, that's just it, right? They're not really designed to go anywhere fast, right? It's like having
Right,
a flat bottom rectangle raft, right?
right.
It's just there
It
to
looks to
float.
me like they were built that way because they're easy to build.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and apparently they're supposed to be pretty damn hard to tip over. So even when you got a lot of weight in them,
yeah. It's just because they build the edges up like way, way high. But they
yeah,
would probably blow around like crazy in the wind. So you would only
yeah.
do that in like just straight river crossings. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. 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 It's really good at just like straight up just going across. That's it. Um but yeah. Um Now other canoes and stuff like that, if you got whatever, get whatever. Just get out on the water. It's fun. Um, I've got nothing against like stand up paddle boards and stuff like that either.
Yeah.
It's fun. But for me, I want something that carries a lot of weight, has the space for two people plus gear and maybe a dog, and that I don't get super exhausted on long trips, you know, and
Yeah.
something that tracks well. So I'm not constantly turning one way or another. So, yeah. And then there's multiple different materials that you can make the things out of, right? So the two most common is either fiberglass or Royal X. So Royal X is usually like this plastic material on the bottom, and they layer it with certain kinds of foam, and then like vacuum seal it, heat seal it, and it's a pretty interesting process that they do for that. But they're super heavy, but also super strong. Like you can hit the thing with a baseball bat, like a rigid, like rough baseball bat, and they're gonna be fine. So usually for like whitewater, that's what you usually see like kayaks made out of. Is it's like just roto molded plastic, pretty much, um, and they're just super durable, and they float really well because they have that foam layer built into them for the most part. Um, so you can't really sink them. Even if you swamp it, it'll be buoyant to a certain degree to where you can still paddle it back to shore in deep water. It's not going to just absolutely sink to the bottom on you. But with fiberglass canoes, they usually don't have foam molded into them. They can, because you can slip foam between the layers of fiberglass and you'll be good that way. Um, but fiberglass generally is a whole lot lighter and has a really good strength to weight ratio, but they don't have as much good puncture resistance. So you need to beef up certain parts of the canoe in order to get a really good like river running canoe. So you're risking punctures. So if you're expecting really rocky water or like tons of really large down trees, I would probably go with like a roto molded. But if you're planning on taking it in and out of the water a lot, and maybe you'll be loading it by yourself and stuff like that. It's kind of nice to have a lighter canoe because even an 80-pound canoe, that's the last one that I had. Man, that sucker was exhausting to carry for long distances.
Yeah.
Like a couple hundred yards on your shoulders, and that'll get really tiring. But the fiberglass ones, they're really easy to carry, and they can weigh like 50 or less pounds. They're really nice. So, yeah. And then I'm thinking about building my own too. I'm like, maybe. So they have old skin on frame boats that you can build, which is you build a frame out of wood and it's almost like like a grid system. So like every 6 to 9 inches or so, you're putting in stringers and longerons just like they do with airplanes, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
and then when that's all done and said, and you lash them together so it's like a skeleton of a boat. And then when it's all said and done, you pull nylon or fiberglass over it. You would do less layers of it because it doesn't need to be as rigid because you have the frame there for strength. Um, and they and so you pull a long piece of fabric over it, sew it down on the ends, and stretch it really well, and then you seal it with like polyurethane or like a like an epoxy would work really well too. That's the way they do fiberglass ones too. Is it's like it's a fiberglass sheet, which is a fabric, and then they seal it with an epoxy resin. So it's almost like concrete and rebar. So the fiberglass acts like rebar, but the concrete is what gives it its strength, which would be akin to the resin that you're using. But in skin on frame, you could probably do a little bit of, you get the best of both worlds almost. But skin on frame seems to be more susceptible to puncturing. But they're only like, you can get them suckers down to like 25 pounds. That's really lightweight for a boat, like a whole boat.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, you're paying for the the durability, right, to get it down that light. So yeah, you got to kind of pick and choose.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely kind of a trade-off. But the good thing about building one like that is you can do it for like 500 bucks. So it's on the really, really cheap end of doing a boat. And the way that I think that the reason I'm thinking about doing it is number one, it's cheap. Number two, I like working with my hands and it'll give me something to do for, a couple of months. And number three, um, you'll get the exact shape out of it that you want. So you kind of get the best of the shape that you want, but your sacrifice is it might not be as durable as you want it to be. But if you build it yourself, who cares? You can take it home and repair it, right? Just
Mm.
bring duct tape wherever you go, right? Flex
Yeah,
seal. So yeah, so I'm thinking about it.
yeah.
So, but so what do you think about that though? We kind of glazed over it and didn't get into it. 20 feet of flooding when we were 18, and we went on a 3-day trip down this river.
I mean, yeah, sounds about right. Do
I
dumb shit, right?
Right, exactly. It's like so it was so flooded. We had this camping spot that we used to go to all the time. So it was like where kind of my frame of reference for camp spots was built. And I just remember that like long drop down the bank. It was like 18 feet to get to the water, right? And then we go into uh, past that campsite because we came around the bank. It was right on the riverbank, and we came around the riverbank as we were canoeing, paddling past, and we paddled into the campsite. Like we parked the boat on top of the fire ring, and there was still like 12 to 8 inches of water there underneath the boat. Isn't that wild?
Yep. But you can do that kind of crazy shit when you're young and
Oh, it was so fun
willing to
too.
live fast and take risks. Yeah,
Yeah, and
like
then I go back and I see it flooded almost as much, like not even as close to as flooded as it was. And I'm like 22, 23 at the time. And I was like, man, that was really fucking stupid. Because
yeah,
I took fluid dynamics and I realized, hey, that water has force behind it. That's a lot of water.
yep.
So yeah, but it was one of the best trips I ever did, and I wouldn't take it back for the world. But it was
Yep.
really freaking
And,
stupid.
and I think we all do that sort of thing, right? Like I slept on top of Blood Mountain in a rainstorm in 0-degree
Yeah,
weather,
that
right?
probably
I mean,
wasn't smart.
it's like when you're young though, it seems like so much fun at the time, right? You barely even think about, yeah, I could die doing this. It's like,
Yeah, you're just toughing it out, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm already here. I'm not going back down the mountain.
I wouldn't. I don't even think I would camp on top of Blood Mountain on a good day.
It's not pleasant. Can't
Right.
recommend it.
It's probably like windier than shit up there too.
Yeah, and they have a little shelter up there. It's recently been redone, but you get so many through hikers coming through that it's normally pretty packed. So you kind of, you got to bring a tent or something. And of course, I
Yeah.
tent camp
Yeah.
and still do. Whereas you'd be really screwed up there in a hammock. But
Yeah. Of course. Man, that would be wild. That's a
yeah,
really fun mountain to hike, though, isn't it?
it
Really
is. It's a
great hike.
blast.
Yeah. Need to do that one again.
Yeah, a couple of
Um,
friends of I were talking about going back there for a Christmas trip this year, but
yeah, that'd be
I gotta
fun.
see if it's yeah, I gotta see if it's in the cards, see if I have enough vacation time left at the end of the year.
Yeah. In a year or two, we need to get you out here and we can do a nice proper hike in Colorado in the
Yeah.
spring. That would be nice. Like late spring.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that sometime once I get work sorted out. Just take like a week's vacation and
One of the things you say you don't hike in the summer because of the mosquitoes and the sweat, right?
oh,
Those are
for
the two
sure.
main
Yeah, the
reasons.
sweat and the bugs,
Sweat and the bugs.
especially here.
Dude, dude, no mosquitoes out here.
Yeah.
There's none. There's flies, and that's it. And they're not that bad. So, and they're not in the mountains in Colorado either. There's hardly any mosquitoes out that way. Isn't that wild? It's really cool.
Well, it's not near as humid up that way either.
Yeah, exactly. So boats, bugs, and all sorts of other fun stuff, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah. What else have we been up to? Um,
I don't know.
we're building dressers today. We got a couple of dressers came in. We ordered some, so selling my old one. Man, that thing sold quick too. I think I had it gone in an hour. Guy's
Yeah.
coming to get it tomorrow.
Hey, that's always nice. Don't
Yeah,
have to move it.
yeah, exactly. Well, we moved it out of the garage, but that's about it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, transport it to
Goodwill or
wherever.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm making $50 off it, so that's
Yeah,
nice. With a
can't
busted
complain.
leg.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah, that's been a big thing for me lately. I've been doing some furniture shopping and stuff like that. So I finally about got the tiny house nailed down. I'm
Yeah.
just getting estimates now. I'm hoping by about November next year I should have it.
Mm.
So
So, if you were gonna, before we get too far away from like the canoes, so I got a backpack for backpacking. I did canoes for canoeing. I got the truck set up for like decent car camping and like really long trips, off roading a little bit. And I even have a setup
your
for my
audio's going in and out.
bike. Can you hear me now? Is that
Yeah,
better?
you gotta just stay a little closer to the microphone. You're good.
So I'm saying if you, so I've got the canoe for going on water-based trips. I got a backpack for walking trails. I've got my truck set up to where I can go on like long trail rides out in the middle of nowhere, Jeep trails and stuff. And I've got a bicycle for when I want to do road exploring uh, a little more intimately, right? And I can strap camping gear to that too. So if you were going to add to your repertoire of exploration gear for camping in a big way, like what would you do? Would you would you focus more on vehicle camping or canoeing or what? Biking
Mm,
maybe?
probably be vehicle camping.
Yeah.
I've never I've never been big on like biking. Like I've done a little bit of kayaking, but I don't really do like long river trips or anything like that. It's
Well,
mostly
you've
just
never
going
tried
out
one
paddling.
either, though, huh?
Yeah, but it's not really something that's how do I put it? It's not something that I care for or that I'm looking to add to my experience anytime soon. It's just, not something that I'm very interested in.
Why not? Do you not like the idea of being, I guess, confined to the water with it?
I don't know. I think it's just like the more factors you introduce into a trip, it's more things that can change, that can go wrong, whatever. So, like for me, for example, I've been backpacking a long time and I'm pretty comfortable with it. And I have all my gear and my checklists and
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. And you know me, I'm a planner and I'm a worrier, right?
It's the same
So,
thing, though. You just slap like you take your backpacking backpack and you put it in the
yeah,
canoe.
but you add a ton more variables to it, right? You
I
add
guess.
river conditions, you add the state of your boat and the upkeep with that. You
Hmm.
add cost with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you tip over and you lose all your gear or something like that, right? You got more shit to replace if stuff goes wrong,
Hmm.
that sort of thing.
It's
So
nice though because you can take a lot more weight on it, so it's a little cushier. So like taking the
yeah,
wife camping, it'll be nice because you can bring wine and beer or whatever.
yeah. But see, at that point, I just go car camping,
Yeah, that's a good point. And I feel
especially
like it's one of those things. I think this really sums it up for you. It's the why is flying so much worse than driving, even though driving is way more dangerous, obviously. But it's like, dude,
yeah,
like there you can crash. Like a crash flying, you're fucked. So
yeah,
so there's a lot more that can go wrong. Like you can't sink backpacking or driving.
yeah. That's part of it, and I think the bigger part is just it's not, and especially too, like the big thing is if you're going in a canoe or whatever, whoever you're going with has to have some knowledge and experience and stuff like that, right? You have to be kind of comfortable on the water. And I do
Hmm.
so many things where I like, kind of shepherd along beginners and stuff like that. It
Hmm.
just doesn't really, it's not conducive to that kind of experience. Because the big thing, and this has always
Yeah.
been what I say when I take people backpacking, is at worst, we're a couple miles from the car, we can hike out and drive home, right? Even if the weather changes, even if the plan goes to shit,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You're never
And
more than a few miles away.
in a lot of really bad situations when you're hiking, the best thing to do is just set up and sit still, right? Is
Yeah.
just wait it out, right? There's no waiting out the storm when you get caught in the middle of a lake somewhere.
Yeah.
It can be a really intimidating experience to be in. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But car camping, huh?
But yeah, no, it would definitely be car camping, and like you said, it would be, for the wife, right? It would be like a big roomy tent and a wine
Air
cooler and
conditioning and
yeah,
AC/DC all
exactly. It
day.
would be like
Yeah,
it would be a luxury type of thing. You know,
yeah, yeah. I I'm kind of digging the idea of doing it for just exploring a lot really quickly.
mhm,
And it seems like a good way to meet people that way too, because you tend
okay.
to be on more populated trails that way in a lot of cases. So
Yeah, and
we'll
I think
see.
that's probably another big difference too, is you like kind of, do a lot of exploration and see new areas and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Whereas I normally, I'll go and see a new area, but then I kind of add it to the mix. And so whenever I take new people, right, I go to places where I've already, seen the sights
It's
and,
definitely
kind of
more
been
of
back
a
around.
social experience for you than it
Yeah,
is for me.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. But that's why I bought a canoe over a kayak too, is because I do like to take friends with me as well. But I don't introduce like totally green people to canoeing per se because I know
yeah,
it can be pretty intimidating. I would only take like a really good friend canoeing because I do have to know that in a rough situation that they will take me seriously, you know?
mm,
Versus like hiking, you can have somebody that's not going to really pay much attention to you, and if they screw up, it's their fault, right? They're not going to die in most
yeah,
cases, but in canoeing, if the ship's sinking, they can really screw you over if they don't listen to you or know what they're doing. You know,
yeah,
they'll just sink the damn thing. So yeah, I feel you. A lot less risk. Car camping's nice too. It's
yeah.
easy.
And it's like, the older I get, the more fun and relaxing car camping seems.
Yeah, especially when I'm like trying to purposefully slow myself down.
Yeah.
It
And
it's all
you go ahead.
about like sitting still and finding a pretty spot rather than the explore.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's partially just that it's such a social thing for me. Like like sitting around the campfire and drinking beers, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's a lot easier to do that when you've got
and bring the
your
cooler with you.
Bluetooth
Yeah,
speakers and your ice chest and all that sitting right there in the back of your car.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun.
Hmm.
So, what else? What else has been going on? How long have we been going here? 42 minutes. Pretty good.
Yeah,
We'll keep going. Uh,
yeah, we can go a little bit longer here.
so back to the tiny home. So you think you got
Oh
it
yeah,
figured out, huh?
finally getting there.
What's
Yep,
the
and I
deal?
was
What's the breakthrough here?
um I finally started to do the math on what I could reasonably accomplish with the budget I had, and found some builders that were in that price range. Finally,
Hmm. Cool. What
yep.
about as
I,
far as finding a place for the tiny home?
so I started. I did some preliminary research into the legal situation in my area. So I'm looking at primarily staying in the southeast, so Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and the Carolinas and Florida. And fortunately, within about the past 3 years, the laws, especially in Georgia and Florida, have really shifted. And now tiny homes are basically treated like trailers or modular homes or anything like that. So you
Hmm.
can put them on private land without
Okay.
interference from the government if they meet certain specifications,
So
basically.
you could just basically buy a cheap piece of land, pour a slab, get the electrical and the sewage hookup, and you're good to go.
Um, I could do it like that. In my case, I'm going to be on wheels because I want to be able to travel within the southeast,
Yeah.
so I won't be going on a slab. Um,
Well, you
but yeah,
if you well, That's for when you want to travel, but I'm talking about like more of the long term thing. You still have to have like a home base, right?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
But for now, see, the biggest issue with the tiny homes that are on wheels is a lot of them you can't park in residential areas. Like I can't, put it on somebody's, lawn, whether or not I have an agreement with them. The county will come and post a big red notice to your door, and then they'll demolish it.
Right. So it has to be kind of a backwoods kind of area that's hidden away from the road,
Well,
kind of
it's
in the
not even that.
trees.
It's just if it's on anything that's in a zone that has been zoned for residential. That used to be how it worked.
Hmm. So
Like
now
you could
how is
be
it?
So now, if the home meets certain specifications and applies or complies with county ordinances, like it's not over a certain height and it has, you know, like waste containment and gray water containment and stuff like that, it can be parked in a residential zone without a
On
problem as
board.
long as you have an agreement with whoever's, living on that land.
So you're talking about being able to just bum it in somebody's driveway.
Yeah, or if I, buy a piece of property that's zoned for residential, I can park on that and then I could build a house there at any point, but I'm not forced to. Because that used to be the requirement is like, let's say I wanted to build a home
Hmm.
somewhere and live out of the tiny house while that home was being built. I wouldn't be allowed to do that unless the home was built in a year or less.
Hmm.
I would basically get kicked off my own land.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so
I think if I
that's
was
recently changed for the better.
so if I was gonna do it now, I would probably want to do the tiny home and then just buy a piece of land that's really good for developing, and then you just save the dough on the house and just park the tiny home on it. I would still do. I'd just get an electrical and water hookup and be good to go. Park the thing,
Yep.
pour a driveway, maybe even a gravel driveway, and that's that. Very
Yep.
minimal land development, I think, is where you really, really save your
You're cutting out again pretty bad.
money. Very minimal land development is where you save your money on that, you know,
Yeah, for sure.
and you don't have
And
to build a whole house and go through that whole process.
yeah. And that's definitely something that I'm looking at further down the line. But for now, a lot of what I do as a software developer, I'm having to still be in kind of close to the city. The working remote is starting to take hold, but it's not cemented enough yet to where I feel comfortable to buy and develop a piece of property
Mhm.
because I'm at this point I'm going to just be moving too often, and so I need to be able to live in closer to the city, and so that's why I'm kind of looking at can I park in people's yards or can I park in trailer homes or RV
Ah,
parks,
so you're
like
really
that.
looking at having an agreement with somebody to where you can really just kind of pay rent to be there.
For now, yes. And especially there's a few places in Georgia specifically where it's communities of like-minded people. So it's basically, an entire village of just parking lots for tiny homes with hookups.
Yeah, that's
And
really
so,
cool. So are those
yeah,
starting to spring up now that the laws has changed on that?
yes, they are, especially in Georgia and Florida. There's, I think, 4 or 5 now in Georgia that I know of, pretty close to the metro Atlanta area, and 4 in Florida outside of pretty much all the major
It's
cities,
still
Miami,
not a lot
Orlando.
though. That sounds like the demand is it sounds like it's going to be you're going to be on a really long waiting list for that.
Yeah, and that's the issue right now. Um, but for now, I'm pretty much having to look at getting a residential, basically bumming off somebody else's land and paying rent.
Hmm.
Because the thing I realized, and this is what finally this is why it's starting to look like more of a reality than a dream, is I'm going to have to sacrifice some of the off-grid capabilities of the home because it's just too expensive to manage.
Yeah, but you can always build the infrastructure into where you can add it later.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's
Exactly.
that's the way to go. It's like, yeah, I'll sacrifice solar panels for now, as long as I could just
Yeah.
build in a hookup and leave room, leave the bolt holes there. Just don't mount panels to them,
Yeah.
just put plugs in the holes.
Yeah, and so far the biggest issue has actually it hasn't been the solar. It's doing gray water treatment and like composting toilets and that sort of thing, getting the
Really,
plumbing
that's
straightened
kind of
out. Yeah,
surprising.
yeah. So because you can do like a composting toilet or a cassette toilet, but then it changes the legal definition of
Hmm.
the home because then it's not considered because to be considered a tiny home versus or a modular home versus an RV or travel trailer or something like that where you could live in it long term, it has to have the residential equivalent of a bathroom. So flush toilet, full standing sink and a shower or tub.
That's kind of weird that you can't just do a composting toilet.
Yeah, it's a little strange. And yet again, laws are starting to shift on that. It's changed in California and like Oregon, I think, on the West
So where's
Coast,
the
but
most tiny house friendly state?
California,
Really?
yes.
Hmm.
Um, it's been their solution to the housing crisis. They've finally started to make some headway on it. And it's still the problem with California is that nothing goes statewide there. Like when most of the legislation passes in Georgia, it'll be statewide, but California, it's all municipal. So like San Diego, San Francisco, and Northern California can all have different laws.
Hmm.
So depending on where you park, you can have some issues there. But
That's really
they've been the
interesting.
most forward thinking in that
Hmm.
regard.
That's pretty interesting. That's
Yeah.
something else, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Tiny homes. I living in a really small apartment. This place is like 650 square feet. Um, I feel like this is pretty perfect for me, but it gets me to think that it's definitely possible to do it in a tiny home.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'm looking on the upper end. I'm looking at because that was the big thing for me was I needed a little bit more square footage. I have a lot of hobbies that take up some serious space. I have a lot of tools and just shit that needs a place to go. And because I'd like to eventually work from home, I needed office space.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm looking at something in like the 350 square foot range, which
Hmm.
is pretty damn big for a tiny house.
Yeah,
There are
just
people that live in
just building a
70 to
desk
100.
space into it is like that kills like a sink and possibly a washing machine too, you know?
Yep.
Yep.
And so so the two companies I'm currently looking at, they do some really interesting designs where you can basically what I'm going to try and see if they'll build for me. I'm having some consultations hopefully later this month. But I'm going to basically build a modular kind of pull out, fold out desk space in the living room
Oh, that's neat.
where yeah. So basically, I'll have my big monitors mounted on the wall, and so I can use those like a TV for, when it's a living room entertaining space, whatever. And then I'll have a computer on basically a sliding, like a recessed rack in the wall.
Mhm.
And then I'll have a fold out desk with a wireless mouse and keyboard. So I'll just fold the desk out, pull a chair over, set my mouse and keyboard down, and I can pull the monitor to wherever I need since it's on a big gimbal mount and the
So it'll
PC's,
double
all
as your
hidden in the
living
wall.
room kind of space.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I'm done, I can fold up the desk, put the chair up, and throw the cushions back on the couch, do
That'd be
whatever.
the
And
way to go. Just get a nice big ass nice monitor.
yep,
Yep, that would be the way to go. And then you could just pull up Netflix, no problem.
exactly.
And I'm sure there are apps on the computer to turn your computer into a TV and just do a Bluetooth remote hookup, bada
Yeah,
bing, bada boom.
you can just plug a Fire Stick into one,
Ah, well, there you go.
into a
And then you can
monitor,
just
and it
lay
all
lay
works.
back on the couch and no problem.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There was actually one company, they do a full integrated entertainment system. So they've got like a 70-inch TV, a 30-inch TV, and the whole wireless hookup package for all of it so that you can, basically run it as a big streaming system.
Wow. That's pretty
It was
impressive. If I was
yeah,
gonna
it
do
was
one, I
something else.
almost would want to like build it myself for sure because it
Yeah.
seems so approachable at that size. But at the same time, I say that knowing that it would probably end up being a 1 or 2 year project,
Yeah,
and that would take up a
exactly.
lot of your time.
And the biggest issue for me, because I actually spoke with my father, he's pretty handy with tools and he knows a couple guys who could do the framing for us. So then we would
Hmm.
just do the interior ourselves. The biggest issue is finding somewhere to park it that's close enough that I can, drive out to it on the weekends and keep working,
Yep.
and also getting it done in a reasonable enough time frame to where I can move out next year.
Yeah.
So
How many of those like YouTube videos of like creative space usage have you seen? Huh?
hundreds.
Dude, I love watching those YouTube videos, like New York apartments or like any kind of small European apartment and how creative they get with those spaces. It
Yeah.
seems that a little bit of inspiration came from that for this apartment, even though this is 650 square feet, the apartment takes up almost, or the kitchen takes up almost half of the main space. So
Yeah.
I had to, I had to anchor a tabletop to the back of the couch to be able for us to have a kitchen table and a space to eat at. There's no like defined space for that here. And
Right.
then we had to get creative, and we ended up getting rid of the coffee table and adding in it's like an ottoman with storage in it and stuff. And then we drag the ottoman over to the kitchen table, and we have extra seating room for when we have guests and stuff. And even if we had too many guests, or a lot of guests, I'll even just roll the office chair out there,
Yeah.
and you've got seating. So yeah, it was the Ottoman was like a really just dead easy choice for this kind of space usage. And then uh, I think having I almost wish we had an extra room, but having a desk at home is like a must for me because I have been working from home, even just gaming and stuff like that. It's nice to have, but the ability to work from home is just such a big deal for
Yep. And it's only
me.
going to become more popular for people in, our types of fields as companies start to realize the cost saving that they can get by having people on a hybrid or a work from home, schedule. It's
Yeah,
only going to become
yeah, because they don't have to pay to keep those lights on. They don't have to pay for the desk or the office chair or anything like that. Yeah,
Yep.
that's a
And they're
ton of
starting to
money.
realize that people work that like, even if you're quote unquote less efficient while at home, you feel more obligated to be, on call or you're closer to your computer. So if you need to resolve an issue right now,
Yeah,
you can
I
do it.
feel like you definitely feel it. People like me, at least, I'm kind of a self-starter, so I feel more guilty about twiddling my thumbs at home than I do when I'm in the office. Because at least I drag my butt to work at the
Yeah.
office, right? So I don't feel as though I owe them as much. But at home, it's like, okay, I have to earn my keep because I'm even at home, you know,
Yeah.
and I feel a little more productive from home because of that.
Yeah.
Whereas at work, you find yourself just sitting staring out of the window, because you need a break, and then your break
Yeah.
just like does that. But at home, it's like you take 15 minutes, when you go take your water break and you go do something that's engaging to your brain, and like at least you're still in a decent mindset to where you're not just like mind numbingly staring off into nothing. You're
Yeah.
doing something, and then you can come back to your desk and knock it out some more. You don't you never make that mind transition from a working mindset to a doing nothing dead mindset, which is a really bad place to be
Yeah.
as far as productivity goes. So,
Yep. And I think honestly the biggest thing for my company that they've noticed is, and I can tell the difference, talking with people, a
mhm.
lot of the people that are used to coming in every day, they don't do anything on Fridays. Even now that we're working from home, like
Yeah,
they just haven't gotten out of that mindset. Whereas it's like, my Fridays are at least productive. I may not, I'm normally pretty brain drained by the end of the week, but I'll get something done,
yeah,
you know. Whereas,
yeah.
you know, it's like Fridays just don't exist in our company, frankly.
Yeah, I
You
feel
know.
like that's the case in a lot of large companies too. And especially if you walk around, you'll know that all
Yeah.
the higher ups are gone at noon on
Oh yeah.
Fridays.
Yeah, they're done.
Yep. So, all right. Well, I feel like this is a pretty good place to end.
Yeah, I think we should probably wrap it up here.
Yeah. So, thanks for tuning in, and I'm gonna let you close it out today. Tell them
All
all
right.
the YouTube things.
All right. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you could share the video with somebody this week, if you liked it, if you thought we said something that was engaging or worth listening to, then share it with a friend.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
yeah, and tell us what you think about canoes and tiny homes in the comments section.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye, everybody.